Good evening, everyone, or good morning, or afternoon, or whatever part of the day it is for you in the place where you are watching this from right now. My name is Lydia Machova, and I'm so glad you decided to spend this time with me today watching this webinar, which will be all about how to finally learn any foreign language of your choice in 2019, because that's something that so many people want out there, right? We're all trying to learn a foreign language, but many people fail at it, and many people fail at it once and again and again and again. And the thing is, it's not that difficult to learn a foreign language if you know a few things about it. And that's what I would like to share with you today in this special webinar, which will be meant specifically for people who have tried it with learning a language before, but somehow it hasn't quite worked out, or you tried it maybe over and over again with different methods and the result is just not there. You don't speak the language as fluently as you would like to. And in that case, you are definitely watching the right webinar. Now, you see me, I don't see you, but I would like to hear about you or hear from you. That's what we have the live chat for. So please let me know if you're watching and where you're watching from. And maybe you can add one little information like what foreign language would you like to learn? Maybe there's even more of them. And what you would like to work on in 2019, because we're going to be very specific about the plans for this year and what we want to do right now with the language. The thing is, many people want to learn some languages like later on in life, or they have plans to one day learn a language of their choice. But we want to be really thinking about what we want to do this year and how. And we will want to be speaking about what really works in language learning. So I'll be happy to share my experience with you, to tell you what has worked for me in learning 9 languages that I have learned so far. And I would love to hear from you as well. So let me know. My team is watching the chat closely. I will not be able to follow it the whole time live, but if you have some questions, my team will try to make sure that we catch these questions, and there will be a Q&A session at the end where I will try to answer all the questions, give you as many answers as possible, but possibly I will answer some of your questions during the webinar. Before we start, I just want to let you know, guys, this week was very special for me, and it's a week of really amazing numbers. And the reason is that my TED Talk was published 5 days ago. Some of you might have seen it. Some of you are here in this webinar because you probably saw me on that TED Talk. And it was just incredible to see that it got 1 million views in only 5 days. And after this really amazing number, which I saw and I couldn't believe it, we saw that more than 10,000 people, I think now it's more than 11,000 people, have signed up for this webinar. And many of you are watching right now live. And I have to tell you, I'm really humbled by that. I'm really grateful that you found the time. And I want to tell you honestly, like what it feels like, because like when you imagine a crowd of 10,000 people, right? This is a picture of a very similar number. It's 8,000 people. And this is the last time that I saw 8,000 people together in one room. And that was at a special workshop of a very special speaker. Now, you may see him now in the picture in the left top corner. I don't know if you can recognize who that is. It's rather small, and maybe you don't see that clearly. So let me help you with that. It's Tony Robbins. This was a seminar of Tony Robbins that I attended in Poland, and I was very lucky to be an interpreter there. I was working at the event, and I was interpreting everything that Tony Robbins said into Slovak for many of the participants who were in that crowd of 8,000 people. And it was such an incredible experience. But the best thing actually happened at the end of that seminar, when someone knocked on the door of our interpreting booth, where 3 of us were working, the Slovak booth, and then entered Tony Robbins' bodyguard first, and right after him, Tony Robbins himself. And he shook our hands and he told us, guys, thank you for your amazing work. You did a great job. And thank you for helping me communicate with all these people, because without the language, your language skills, I couldn't do it because of the language barrier, right? It was 8,000 people. There were Poles, there were Russians, there were Slovaks, and a few other nationalities. And it was just so amazing to see such an amazing person, Tony Robbins. I'm sure many of you know him. Actually, let me know in the chat if you know Tony Robbins. I believe if you are from the US, then you have definitely heard of him. One of the best known speakers out there. And it just meant a lot to me when he acknowledged that it is really important to know another foreign language and to be able to communicate with it, because that's what enables you to spread your message on, right? Tony would not be able to do it at once in all the languages. So that's what we were for as professional interpreters. So anyway, when I imagined that crowd of 8,000 people who were there at the seminar of Tony Robbins, I was like, oh my God, so many people came to listen to this one guy. And then when I saw that 11,000 people signed up for this webinar, I really, really felt very humbled by that and grateful, incredibly grateful. So it's great to have you guys here. And let me introduce myself. Let me tell you briefly before we start, before I give you some practical tips on how to learn languages and what language learning is really about. Let me just briefly introduce myself so you know if it's worth your time listening to me, okay? So my name is Lidia Machova. I am from Slovakia, and I've been a language learner for the last 18 years of my life. I've spent a lot of time learning a lot of languages, and I'm very glad to be able to say that I keep 7 of them at a comfortable fluency level, which means that I'm able to have a casual conversation with native speakers when I meet them on my travels or when they come somewhere where I am. And so I've collected a lot of experience learning languages in this way, because all of these languages that I've learned by myself. I've never lived abroad. The longest time I've spent abroad was in Poland, and that was 10 months altogether. But other than that, all my trips are rather short term. So I always learn my languages in Slovakia using available resources, and I will be telling you about those very soon. Besides that, as I already hinted, I worked as a conference interpreter for 6 years. And I had the pleasure to work with very interesting people. For example, in the picture right next to me, you can see Slovakia's former first lady, wife of Slovakia's former president. And I also interpreted Brian Tracy, whom many of you will probably know as author of many, many, many books, also a very well-known speaker. I've already mentioned Tony Robbins, whom I interpreted in Poland. I've interpreted a lot of ministers and European politicians, etc. And I even got to Peru, to a rainforest, and interpreted in the jungle. There was a shaman who is in the picture. I really collected the most incredible experience as a conference interpreter, but that's not as relevant. What matters is that I work with languages professionally. So I studied English and German at a university, later did my PhD in interpreting studies, and that's where my language background comes from. Besides that, I worked as a language teacher for 10 years, and I've attended many conferences conferences for English language teachers, such as the one in Barcelona in the picture. I started helping students when I was like 15. It really goes back a long time. I held courses in companies. I taught in language schools and at the university while doing my PhD. So I've been dealing with the fact of how languages are taught for basically all my life. But then I stopped. I stopped teaching after 10 years because, to be honest with you, I felt rather frustrated. My frustration was because I was just not able to help my students the way I was learning languages myself. So I saw that these people come to my lessons and I'm doing all I can, but somehow I cannot get them to have the results that I had in the languages. I usually learned a new language every 2 years, but my students did not have those results and they were progressing a lot slower. And for a long time, I was thinking, what's the problem here? Like, what's the difference between me and them? And of course, everybody gave me a clear answer to that. And they said, oh, come on, Lidia, you're so talented. Like, obviously, you're so special. And that's why you can learn a lot of languages and it's easy for you. But we are not talented, and that's why we don't have those results. And I was just not happy with that answer. I thought it must be something else, because I don't see myself as especially talented or gifted or special in any way. I just think that I found a way how to learn languages much more effectively than most people. And by the way, all polyglots that I know also found those ways, and we basically do the same things, and it works. So That's why I changed my profession and I decided to never be a language teacher again, where I come to a lesson and people expect me to teach them the language because they paid for my lesson and I'm the teacher, I'm supposed to teach them. I decided to do something completely different. And this is how language mentoring came into existence. And I've been doing this exclusively for the last 3 years. I've been doing a lot of workshops, seminars, talks, webinars like this one, where I try to tell people what language learning is really about from my point of view as a person who's learned many languages and who's taught people languages. And I'm trying to not teach people languages, but rather teach them how they can learn a language by themselves. And this is what language mentoring is all about. And this is why we're having this webinar here today. 2 more things about me, and then we go to the content of this webinar. I also happen to have organized the biggest polyglot event in the world, which happened last year, 2018, in Bratislava, Slovakia. The name is Polyglot Gathering, and I had the great honor to be the main organizer of 2 of those events. It's a series of events. The first 3 years were organized by someone else in Berlin. Now I helped with the Polyglot Gathering in Bratislava. I was the main organizer, and it was basically 540 people who on average speak 6 languages, all meeting for 5 days in Bratislava. Really a cool event. And this enables me to know how other polyglots learn languages too. I have so many polyglot friends, so many people who, you know, have language learning as their hobby, and we like to discuss that. And so I like to always compare my ideas with my friends, my polyglot friends' ideas, and come up with the best ways how languages are learned. You may recognize some of the people in the picture, possibly. Maybe you know Richard Simcott. He is one of the best polyglots out there. He has learned more than 50 languages, and I'm not kidding you, 50 languages. He's able to have a very fluent conversation in at least 20 or 30 of them. It's really incredible. Luca Lampariello is also very well known as a YouTube polyglot. Benny Lewis, of course, from Fluent in 3 Months, one of the best known polyglots out there, whom I mentioned in my TED Talk as well. Judith Meyer, one of the previous organizers of Polyglot Gathering, or Steve Kaufman, also an amazing polyglot whom I respect very much. So this is my other role, organizer of polyglot events. And then finally, and I'm really excited to be able to introduce myself like this because this is really new, this is fresh. I've been a TED speaker officially for 5 days. I had my TED Talk back in October in New York. They invited me for the TED Salon, and I couldn't believe it for a few days. And then I couldn't believe that they would actually feature my talk on the main website. And then I couldn't believe that it got 1 million views in 5 days. Like, this is really something else. This is out of this world for me. And it was featured as the TED Talk of the week, which was really, really a great honor for me. So I'm wondering if you have seen that talk. Anybody, let me know in the chat, and my team will let me know the result of your discussions. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, then watch it afterwards, not right now, because you would miss 10 minutes of this webinar, and I have a lot of interesting content prepared for you. So maybe watch it afterwards. If you like it, then feel free to share it with your friends, trying to spread the main idea, what language learning is really about. And I'm glad to see people's reactions telling me that I've succeeded, and you know, I managed to put something across which makes sense, and people agree with me, especially people who have experience learning languages and being successful in languages. So that's about me. And yeah, let me just check if everything is working out fine. I see a few thousand people already online. Hi, everyone. If you join us a little bit later, so great to have you with us live. I see that Caroline is saying, hi, Lydia, congratulations on an amazing talk. Thank you. Huge number of people watching your talk. It will grow, only grow, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Purvi says, so good to see so many people from all over the world here for a common purpose. I'm very glad to see that too. You guys can see everyone else chatting in the chat. I'm sure it must be buzzing. And Paulo says 1 million views. Agnieszka, of course, I have seen the TED Talk. Wow, that's nice. And I see a few questions being gathered in the chat as well. My team is writing it all down for me, so I'll be sure to answer your questions by the end of the webinar. Okay, Milan says, I'm watching this because on that video I saw you mean business, right? I mean, I'm serious about learning languages, and I really honestly want to help people learn them well, because I'm telling you guys, this has been frustrating me for such a long time. People telling me that my results in language learning are due to my talent. And I was like, no, 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 it must be something else. Well, now, after 3 years of being a language mentor, something that I came up with in order to help people learn languages by themselves, I know that this is not about talent. And I know it for sure because now I have thousands of people who have tried the ways of learning languages that I suggest, and they have succeeded. So that's what we will be talking about as well. Now, before we continue, I would just like to briefly say hi to some of you listening, but I don't want to make this too boring because this webinar is about languages, right? And it's about foreign languages and learning foreign languages and speaking them. So let me switch to maybe a few foreign languages for now, just for a minute or two. And I'm curious to see how many of those languages you will understand, how many of you are able to understand what I will be saying in those languages. And if you hear me say something that you understand, you can react to that in that chat. So let's just switch to a few more languages now, okay? Po slovensky sa samozrejme musím prihovoriť, to by nebol webinár, aby som nepovedala niečo v mojej rodnej reči, takže pozdravujem srdečne všetkých Slovákov a samozrejme aj Čechov, ktorí ma rozumejú. Slovenčinu som sa nikdy neučila ako cudzí jazyk, ale rodný. Now, my first foreign language was English, and I started it when I was 11. And I fell in love with it right away. It was my favorite subject at school. That's why I spend more and more time with it. And I just wanted to speak it better and practice it and then use it wherever. And I'm very, very happy to say that the whole, everything that I've achieved in my English skills is basically self-studying, because I've never lived abroad. I've never been, actually, I haven't spent more time in an English-speaking country than like 15 days altogether. I've visited the UK a few times and now New York because of the TED Talk for 4 days. But that's basically it. I really haven't spent much time in English-speaking countries, and so I just learned it here in Slovakia, and that's how it works with my English. Ich habe dann eine andere Fremdsprache angefangen zu lernen, als ich 15 Jahre alt war. Das war Deutsch. Und ich muss zugeben, dass mir die Sprache am Anfang gar nicht gefallen hat. Ich weiß nicht warum, aber irgendwas hat nicht gestimmt. Und dann habe ich angefangen, neue Methoden zu entdecken, und auf einmal hat es Spaß gemacht. Und jetzt liebe ich die Sprache und ich liebe es, sie zu benutzen, wenn ich nach Österreich fahre oder nach Deutschland oder ich treffe mich mit jemandem Deutschsprachigen. Also wenn es jemanden gibt, der mich jetzt versteht, dann bitte schreibt mal was in den Chat. Ich werde es später lesen, und jetzt kann ich gar nicht reagieren, aber später werde ich es mir sicher aussuchen. Bueno, después de inglés y alemán he aprendido otro idioma, el español, y eso cambió todo, porque después de 2 idiomas en la escuela, he aprendido un idioma solo como autodidacta. Y eso fue increíble para mí, porque no he necesitado profesores, no he necesitado viajar a otros países. He usado unos métodos aquí en Eslovaquia, aprendiendo un idioma que me encantó mucho por las canciones y porque suena tan bien. Y por eso, bueno, así he aprendido el español. Después he viajado un poquito en América Latina, pero cuando ya estaba hablando un poco. Si me entienden unos hispanos hablantes aquí, por favor, me pueden escribir en el chat y lo voy a leer un poquito más tarde. Potem, proszę Państwa, się nauczyłam po polsku i myślałam na początku, że to będzie najbardziej łatwy język dla mnie, dlatego że jest tak podobny do słowackiego. Myślałam, że chyba będę potrzebowała, nie wiem, 3 albo 4 miesiące i zaraz wiem po polsku. No i tak nie było. Właśnie był to najtrudniejszy język, którego się uczyłam, właśnie dlatego, że jest tak podobny do słowackiego. I zrozumiałam, że muszę jednak spędzić dosyć czasu, żeby nauczyć się po polsku, wszystkie końcówki, ale jednak bardzo, bardzo go lubię. I pozdrawiam wszystkich Polaków wszędzie w świecie, i jeśli ktoś rozumie teraz, co mówię, więc proszę napisać mi do czatu, później przeczytam. If you're wondering what happened to my mic right now, that was the Slovak Sign Language, okay? It was not supposed to be with sound. So just a quick explanation, that was the Slovak Sign Language. D'accord. Après, j'ai appris une autre langue, le français. Et la raison était que je faisais mes études, mon doctorat, ici en Bratislava. Et j'avais besoin de textes sur l'interprétation simultanée en français. Il avait des textes seulement en français. Et comme ça, je décidais de l'apprendre, de passer quelques mois avec le français. Et après, je l'utilisais un petit peu en voyageant en France pendant 2 semaines. Et maintenant, si je peux, je l'utilise quand je peux. Alors, s'il y a des francophones, on peut m'écrire dans le chat. Right. Poste mi lernis alian lingvon, Esperanton. Mi credas ke estas la plej facila lingvo de la mondo, ĉar mi ne bezonis 2 jarojn por lerni ĝin, mi nur bezonis 2 monatojn. Kaj mi vere ŝatas ĝin. Mi ne uzas ĝin ofte, sed se mi povas, mi tre ĝojas, kiam mi povas uzi Esperanton kun esperantistoj. Do mi vere interesiĝas. Se iu komprenas nun, bonvolu skribi al mi en la tujmesaĝilo. А потом 4 года назад я начала изучать русский язык. Потом я поехала в Москву и в Питер, познакомилась с людьми, и они все мне сказали: Лидия, ты еще ничего не знаешь. Ты была в Москве, в Питере, ты не знаешь, что это Россия. И тебе надо путешествовать немножко больше. Поэтому в следующем году я поехала из Москвы в Монголию по Транссибирской магистрали. И это было самое лучшее путешествие, которое я сделала. Мне это очень понравилось. Тоже в Казахстане, в Киргизии мне понравилось. И вообще я очень люблю русский язык. Na sasa ninasoma Kiswahili. Niliamua kusoma Kiswahili kwa sababu ni kitu kipya, ni lugha tofauti sana. Na ninataka kusafiri Tanzania na Kenya mwaka huu, na ninataka kuwasaidia Masai na kusafiri kidogo. Ninapenda sana Kiswahili na sijakuwa Afrika kamwe. Okay, guys, that was it. And don't worry if I hope I haven't made anyone leave this webinar thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to do the webinar in all the languages. I don't understand, where are the subtitles? This is not going to happen. Okay, I just wanted to say a quick hi to anyone who's watching out there, and I would love to know if like what languages you got, which ones you understood. That was just like a quick test to test the audience. I'm sure you understood a lot in some of those languages. I wasn't saying anything difficult, but basically what I was trying to say or do with this is to show you the level that I speak these languages. And I want to be totally honest with you guys. I suppose some of you might have heard some minor mistakes in the languages that I spoke, and that's okay for me. Because the thing is, my goal in learning all these languages is to be able to use them in practice, use them speaking to people, use them to read a book, like in this picture. Let me show you. These are the books that I like to read, and whenever I want to read a new book, first of all I see what languages it was translated into, and then I pick, okay, do I want to read this in Spanish or in Polish or in French? And this is the way how I keep up with the languages. I don't have any specific way, nothing like, okay, I practice every day and I have 15 minutes of that and 20 minutes of that. Nothing like that happens. I'll explain to you later how exactly I do it to make sure that I keep the level of that language. But just to be clear about what it means to learn a language, it means something different for everyone else. For me personally, it means to be able to communicate. So I'm not trying to reach perfection. I'm sure I have accent in all the languages I speak, but I know that people understand me and can communicate with me, and that's what matters most. So all my methods are based on communication. I want people to be able to speak the language and to be able to use it without being frustrated or worried too much. Okay, let's get to the 5 reasons, because this will be the most important thing that I want to cover in this webinar. The 5 reasons why you haven't learned that foreign language yet. And by that foreign language, I mean any foreign language that you have tried to learn in the last years or all your life. My methods apply basically to any foreign language. I personally don't have experience learning Asian languages like Chinese, Korean, Japanese, but I know the same principles apply. It just requires a little bit more energy and practice, probably. So the reason number one, and you might recognize some of these things as your own reasons. Well, first of all, you have your own objective reasons, right? What do I mean by objective reasons? Well, first of all, like people say, okay, I'm not learning a language. Why? Because I don't have the language gene. This is the most frequent one. I'm not talented enough. I'm not as talented as you, Lydia. You're clearly talented. I don't have the language gene. Let me discuss this one with you in a while. But this is a very, very frequent thing to say. I don't have time to learn languages. And this is a very frequent reason too. People say they don't have time. And again, I will address it in just a second. I just want to go through the reasons first. I don't know which methods work. There's a lot of them out there, I know. And it may be a bit frustrating at the beginning to know which methods work and which are the best. But I'm afraid the solution is not to do any of those, thinking, oh, I don't know which one is the best, so I'd better not do anything at all. It's better to start testing and see what works for you, right? I don't have the right texts or videos or materials for my level, for my language. Well, this may be a problem with some languages, and trust me, I know this problem because right now I'm learning Swahili, or Kiswahili as it is said, which is used in Tanzania and Kenya. It's the second largest language in Africa, and yet there are so few materials out there. It is tricky for Swahili. But if you're learning French or German or Spanish or English as a foreign language, right? I'm sure there's a lot of people watching as well, or Russian or Polish. These languages have a ton of materials, okay? But we'll get back to that as well a bit later. Or maybe you say, I don't have anyone to speak to in that language. Well, as I said, these are reasons not to learn a language or not to be doing anything about the fact that you would like to speak that language well, and yet you're not doing anything to change it right now because you have some of those reasons or maybe all of those reasons, right? Well, I would like to change the word reasons and maybe call them excuses. Because let me tell you why. I think the times have changed incredibly in the last few years. And the reason they have changed is the internet. Way in the past, that's the picture in the bottom corner, we did not have access to information, to resources, to learn any language. Basically, if you wanted to learn a language in the 80s or 90s, what you had to do is maybe go to your library, go to your school, go to your language school, find a teacher who teaches that language, and get materials from them. And if they did not have anything or they would not lend it to you, then too bad, you were not able to learn, right? But today, guys, things have changed tremendously because we have the internet. The internet has it all. Seriously, you can find everything out there. You can even find materials for Swahili. I found a great website with grammar charts and grammar explanations for Swahili, all online or available, even for free. So many things are available for free. You just have to know which ones to pick. And this really, the internet has turned all these reasons why not to learn a language into excuses. Because, and I really love this quote. Let me see. Okay, now I don't see. Yes, here we go. Okay, sorry, here we go. If you really want to learn, sorry guys, this is just the internet. You see, I'm praising the internet here, and this is what the internet does to me. Isn't that ironic? Okay, the quote is, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. Jim Rohn is the author of this, and I love this quote because it's so true. The question is, how much do you really want to learn that language, right? And if you are honest with yourself, maybe you did not want it all that much, right? Maybe you were saying, oh, it would be cool to learn that language, but are you willing to give it the time and effort that it requires? Because learning a language does require some time and effort. And I'm telling you this as a person who has learned 9 of those, keeping 7 of those fluent, and knowing hundreds, literally hundreds of people who are really good at learning languages. And I can tell you, it always requires some energy. It doesn't just happen overnight. I know that when we speak about polyglots, this question always comes up. What about the talent question? What about the talent issue? Isn't it all about just being talented? Isn't it that some people are lucky and they have the talent and some people are not? Well, I answered this question in my TED Talk, and I believe I answered it pretty well with the example of my two friends, Benny and Lucas, who had exactly that experience as many of you watching. They were really bad at languages at school. And I know, so like basically the typical polyglot story from really the hundreds of people I know from the polyglot gathering, hundreds of people were really bad at languages. And then something changed and now they're very good at languages. So my question is, if there was really this talent, and if they are so talented because today they speak 12 or 15 or 20 languages, if they had had the talent from the beginning, wouldn't it have shown somehow? Wouldn't they have been not the worst, but maybe the best students in class? I mean, if you have talent, then things come easy to you, right? You're learning French at school and you are super talented to learn languages, then you must be the best student in class. You don't have to do your homework or anything, but the talent will help you, right? This is what you would suppose. And yet, a lot of my polyglot friends really sucked at languages at school. They were not good at them at all. But then they changed the way how they learned them. And they will all tell you, forget about the school system. It just doesn't work. And unfortunately, I'm really sorry to say that, because languages are taught like that all over the world, all the time, and nothing has changed. Unfortunately, the school system has not really reflected the fact that we have the internet. And with the internet come incredible resources. So what students today need to learn is how to use those resources by themselves. They don't even need the teachers for every single activity. They still need the teachers to help them with speaking and, grammar explanation and checking on them, etc. That's all perfectly fine. But there are so many resources that they could be working with at their own pace and in their own time, that really this changes the language learning in the world dramatically, right? So I'm not saying that I don't have any talent and I'm not better at learning languages than other people. I am, okay? I know that I have some predisposition to learn languages faster or maybe better than other people, but that only gives me the advantage of maybe, I don't know, 10%. I am probably better at learning languages, or when I was born, I was probably better at learning languages than 10%. I was 10% better than most people who are not good at learning languages. Let's put it like that. All the rest of my results, all the 90% of my language learning skills is due to my effort, due to my work, due to the fact that I did something with this talent, because talent by itself doesn't really help you. There is another wonderful quote which totally puts this. It says, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. If you are the least talented person in the world, you don't need to worry, because if you work on your language, you can still be so much better than the most talented person who does nothing about it. The effort that you put into anything, this doesn't just apply to language learning, right? If you put effort into any activity, you can be totally better than anyone else who is talented and doesn't do anything about it. Let me know, guys, if you agree with this or if you have experience with this in any other area of life. My experience is people usually tell me, Lydia, this is so true, not just for language learning, but for anything out there. So I really, really like this quote. I think it's so true. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Don't worry if you are not talented. You can still catch up. You'll just need to work maybe 10, maybe 15% more than other people. But the 85 or 90% of work will be the same. The second reason why people don't learn, and now let's not talk about reason, let's talk about excuses already, right? Let's call it as it is. I don't have time to learn a language. And I hear this all the time. Well, it's all good for you, Lydia. You're an interpreter. Of course you learn a language. I mean, of course you learn languages. That's your job, basically. Well, first of all, it's not as when I was an interpreter. You're supposed to be working with one or maybe two languages. Interpreters don't usually work with more languages. That's another myth. But anyway, I have another quote for you, which I really love. Time is not something you can have. time is something you create. And it really is about priorities. Let's not talk about having time or not having time. Let's talk about, is it important enough for you to put it in your schedule so that you create time for it? This is what really matters. And I can assure you, I am quite a busy person and I do a lot of other things in life besides language learning. Actually, I rarely ever spend more than an hour a day learning a language. This is what I've been doing in the last 18 years. And this is what got me to learning 9 languages and speaking 7 of them on a fluent level, right? Because I make language learning my priority. Now, it's special for me. I don't suppose that you guys will want to learn many languages, probably some of you, maybe, but it's, of course, not the typical goal of most people. Most people are happy to be able to speak 1 or 2 foreign languages, which is perfectly fine. But even with that one language, if you don't make it your priority, if you don't make sure that you find time for it in your busy day, then nothing's going to change, right? I mean, it will not happen that you will be less busy next year. How should it? I mean, we know that our lives are getting busier and busier with all the social media and information and everything else, and ambitions and work and family. Of course, everybody has a lot to do, but we have to create the time for that language. We have to just make it, right? And this is possible if it becomes a priority. Like me personally, I love to learn my language in the morning. So I wake up. I usually have my phone with the alarm clock. I have it on a book, like my Gold List book, which I will tell you about in a minute. I have it basically on it, right? So when I wake up, this is my first idea. It's like a little hint that, oh, you wanted to do some gold listing before doing your other stuff. And gold listing means rewriting vocabulary and learning vocabulary in a really, really cool way. I'll mention it later on. So I make time for it, and afterwards, that's when I open my emails and do my other work. But first, I do my Swahili learning or Russian learning or whatever language I'm learning at a given time, and then I continue with my other stuff, right? So that's how I create time. I make it because it is a priority for me. Now, the most important thing I want to tell you about language learning can be summed up very nicely in 4 pillars. And those of you who have seen my TED Talk, probably this will ring a bell. So let me sum it up for you. And if you haven't heard it, then please pay attention now. This is really important. You basically need to meet 4 things, 4 basic criteria to learn any language successfully, whatever you do. And there are so many options. There is not one unique way how to learn a language. There are so many. So first of all, you need to make it fun. It needs to be enjoyable for you in whatever way you can achieve it. And the problem for most people is language learning is boring for them because the school has made it boring. Let's be honest about it. I mean, the traditional way of teaching language is not the most fun experience in the world. I get it. It was not for me either. That's why right away after starting to learn English and German at school, I realized it's much more fun if I do it my way. And I started to read my materials, which I wanted to read, and not the text that, my textbook dictated for me. I pick the materials and I work with them. And I love to use the example of Harry Potter because Harry Potter is something that many people love. And I just loved reading Harry Potter in Spanish. And I'm telling you, my Spanish was not on a very good level when I started. I had been learning it for 2 or 3 months, and I just decided to read Harry Potter. I had the Slovak translation next to it. I was listening to the audiobook in Spanish and following the text, and it didn't make much sense at the beginning. I really just got individual words like names, Dumbledore and Hogwarts and whatnot. And then later these things started to make sense, and I understood sentences, and it was just the most incredible feeling because it was fun. It was fun to learn a language this way and not just to do grammar exercises from the book, right? So whatever way you pick, you need to make it fun. And if you have been learning in a way and you are now thinking, oh, but my ways are not fun at all, then you're doing something wrong. Okay, I'll say it very openly. You need to change your materials, your methods, or your approach to learning languages, because if it's not fun, you're not doing it right. And I know you might be thinking, oh, but it's fun for you. Some people like it and others don't. I thought so too, but actually now, after having worked with thousands of people in the language mentoring project, I know that almost anyone can fall in love with language learning, even people who hated it for many years. It really is about finding another way. Like if you, for example, learning, okay, I need to tell you the example now. Learning vocabulary, such a boring way, right? I love to use a beautiful notebook like this one for noting down my vocabulary in the language I'm learning. So this is my Swahili Gold List book, and I made it very small. It usually is a bigger one. But what I do is basically, let me see if you can see it on camera. I write down expressions in Swahili and I translate them into Slovak, the other way around. And then I just do this every day. I do a new list every day in here and I don't do anything else. And then 2 weeks later, I get back to the previous list, which is 2 weeks old, and I rewrite these words in here, but I check which ones of those I know already. And I know this sounds amazing for those of you who heard about it for the first time, but you will have remembered about 30% of those words just by writing them down and letting them forgotten for 2 weeks, not looking at them, not checking, not revising, nothing. Just rewriting 2 weeks later, it works amazingly. This method by David James, a well-known polyglot in the polyglot community, is really something special. And it's so simple. You basically just need to know how it works. And you know, it's easy to find that information and to just start using it. That's all it takes. So the Gold List method is one great example of how language learning can be fun if you enjoy it. Now, the Gold List method will not be for everyone. Some people prefer other methods, but they need to make sure it's fun for them. And by the way, later on, I'm going to invite 3 guests into my webinar, and one of them will tell you exactly that experience, why Gold List was not fun for him, and he decided to try it with another method. The second thing you need to make sure you do when you want to learn a language is to find effective methods. And the Gold List method is a great example of how learning happens into the long-term memory. An example of a bad method for vocabulary is trying to just write down a list of words and memorizing them for a test, which is tomorrow or in 2 days, because you're putting the words into your short-term memory. And I know this is something we've all been doing at school and in language courses, and we think that this is how we learn words, but the truth is we don't. And when you ask polyglots like how they learn vocabulary, they will tell you about their methods. And they are so different because they always make sure they want to keep the words long term. They don't want to always learn the same words over and over again. And that's why effective methods are really, really crucial. And the shortest way to tell you, okay, what is an effective method? How do I know? Is watch polyglots. I personally always love to learn from people who have achieved results, which I want to have as well. And you know, if I see someone succeeding in using methods in an effective way, then that's probably what works. So I would love to copy it. That's why if you watch some of the polyglots that I mentioned also at the beginning, you will definitely find a lot of really effective methods. Now, the third thing you need to know is have a system in your learning. And this is something that many people fail to do, and it's so crucial. The thing is, if you don't plan your learning, if you don't make a schedule, and if you don't make sure that you know what you'll be doing for the next month or maybe 2, and if you don't know why you're doing these things, then it will just not work out. Because the thing is, with our motivation, it's always so high at the beginning, right? We want to learn a new language, and we're excited about it, and we download the Duolingo app, and we get a book, and we watch a YouTube video, and it's fun. But 2 weeks later, or maybe even 1 week later, it's like, nah, maybe I'll skip today, right? And the next day you go like, oh, well, I skipped yesterday, so let's do a little weekend break. And 1 week later you go like, oh, well, I haven't really been learning for the last week, so let's just forget it. And this is what happens if you don't have a system in your learning. So many people fail at language learning because they lack a system. And it's so easy to make it, it's just keeping track of your learning. And by the way, you guys watching this webinar can look forward to a really amazing gift, which I'm going to give you later on in this webinar, which will help you learn systematically. And it's all you need to learn systematically. And finally, one really important thing to learn a language well is having patience. This basically means that language learning will take some work, some energy from you, and it's really important that you give it that energy. Guys, please don't waste money on magical methods which will teach you the language in 2 weeks. I'm telling you very honestly and openly, it doesn't exist. Okay, it's impossible. I mean, speaking a language, knowing a language, understanding a language, that's a lot of work, because that's a lot of words we need to put in our head, and we need to have seen those words many times, and we need to have heard them many times. And if you, I mean, there is no way someone can cram it into your memory in 2 weeks. It just doesn't happen. Okay, so be prepared that if you want to learn a language well, it will take some time. Now, how much time? That's the most difficult question to answer, and polyglots will usually not give you an answer to that. I will give you an answer based on my experience. Okay, it usually takes me 2 years to learn a new language, whereas I have some breaks. So all in all, the amount of time I spend learning or being in touch with a language is about a year and a half. And as I said, I never, hardly ever learn for more than an hour a day. So when we count it all together, that's about, roughly speaking, about 500 hours of learning. But this is really such a rough number. Don't quote me on that, okay? Because this really depends on how many languages you've learned before, what is your mother tongue, how distant is this language to your mother tongue, and what other languages have you learned? Like me, for example, I speak a few Romance languages. I speak Spanish, French, and Esperanto is very similar to them grammatically, so I can count it in. If I want to learn Brazilian Portuguese, which by the way, I do want to learn, this will be my next language, it will take me a lot shorter because I already understand, like, I don't know, 20, 30% of Brazilian Portuguese. I love listening to the music and I understand a lot through Spanish and French. So it will be a lot shorter. If I want to learn Arabic or Chinese, that will take me a lot longer, right? But to give you a very rough idea, it usually takes me about, and I'm saying about 500 hours learning a European language, being a European, native speaker of a Slavic language. So just to give you an idea that this will not be 5 hours or 50 hours. Okay, hope that helps. So this is it, guys. These are the 4 pillars of learning any foreign language successfully. You need to make sure you enjoy it, because otherwise you won't be doing it, right? You need to find effective methods which you can enjoy. Find a system in it and just do it long enough to see the results. That's all it takes. And these are basically the 4 things I said in my TED Talk. This is the message worth sharing, as TED called it, and this is what has been seen by 1 million people in the last 5 days. So here you have it with a bit more explanation. Let's go back to the reasons why people, maybe you, have not succeeded in learning a language so far. The second thing is, you might have been learning languages the wrong way. And I would like to explain to you something now. I spent many years thinking about it. What is it actually that works for polyglots? Why is it different? Why do they succeed? Why do we succeed in language learning? Many people don't. And I have a beautiful metaphor to show you, and I think this will help you understand. Let's imagine that learning a language is like having a blank sheet of paper. Okay, let me see if I have a sheet of paper here. Right. And so this is our brain when we start learning a language, and we want to make it blue, meaning we want to put all the words of the new language onto the sheet of paper, onto our brain. So this means blank paper, I don't understand anything in that language, like this is Chinese for me. And the blue paper is, I understand everything in the language. This would be Slovak for me, right? Even though I don't know all the words in Slovak. Anyway, so the school approach, the traditional approach to learning languages is cut this paper into very regular squares and color them step by step. So you go to the first lesson and you learn about the present tenses, right? And we learn about the, let's say in English, the present continuous. And we color that little square and we color it and we make sure we know all the exceptions and all the special rules and all the irregular verbs, etc. And we write a test and then we go to the second square. And then we color it completely. And now we're talking about present simple tense, right? And we know that third person takes S, and we know that there are a few irregular verbs, etc., etc. And this is what we do, right? Grammar-wise and vocabulary-wise. With vocabulary, first you learn the days of the week, then you learn the fruit and vegetables, then you learn, I don't know, the colors, and you always make sure you do all of them nicely and you write a test, and then you move on to the next one. Now, unfortunately, what happens after several months or even years of learning a language this way, when you look at the paper as it is in the picture, you know a certain area of the language very well. You have written test, you know all the grammar, you can quote the grammar rules, but the rest of the paper is blank for you. It's all white because you haven't even taken a glimpse at it. You know, you haven't been in touch with it at all. You have no clue how to say I would want something, the conditional, because that's way advanced. Like, we're not there, guys, yet, right? In our lessons, we are now doing the past tenses, so don't worry about the conditional, we'll learn it later. This is the traditional approach, which is so limiting because you've spent so much time learning a language, but learning a very limited part of that language. And this is the problem with the school method. And this is why people, after many years of attending classes, feel that they cannot learn, they cannot use the language at all. They feel they cannot really speak, they don't really understand. They may have a very good comprehension of that part of the language. You know, they know the modals, they know the present tenses, etc. But they have no clue about the second conditional. Or I'm speaking some, saying some grammar terms which may not be known to you, so don't worry about it. It just explains that you know a part of the language very well, but not the rest. Now, how do polyglots do it? Very differently. Let me show you how it works with polyglots. Polyglots learn in a natural way. Polyglots copy the way that children learn languages. And when they start learning language, they learn a word here and there, whatever interests us. We basically go, we work with materials which are even meant for native speakers, and we pick the words which we are interested in. So, for example, I learned in Swahili that food is chakula. Okay, so this is one word that I learned. Later on, I was more and more in touch with the language, and I started to put these words together and make more sense of them, and maybe learn more of these words and just put more dots on the white paper. And I learned that, let's say, spicy food is chakula chapili, right? Because, and that was something that interested me, even though it may be an advanced word in a foreign language. It interests me pretty well because I don't really like spicy food. And I'm going to go to Kenya, Tanzania, and I want to be able to tell them, to ask if the food is spicy or not. So this is what I learned later on. And then I kept learning Swahili and putting, just making more connections of the language, and basically coloring this paper more and more by finding new words, new connections, up to the moment where the paper is almost blue. And it doesn't need to be completely blue. I don't need to know all the words in the language. I just need to make sure that I know more and more, and that I know a bit of everything in the language. So when you look at the first picture, there are some dots in the top right corner, right? And that may be a really advanced vocabulary or really advanced grammar, but I still want to know this because this is relevant to me. And this is how polyglots learn languages. I hope this is clear. And guys, please let me know in the comments if this makes sense. I would really love to know. The school method is really limited in what is taught and like how deep you go in a very limited area, whereas the natural learning, the polyglot way of learning languages, is basically discovering the language and building up on top of what you already know, like having a rough clue, and later on, knowing more of those words up to the level where you can communicate. And this is what I'm trying to achieve in all my languages. I'm trying to have the paper more blue than white, and by doing it naturally, by reading text, by listening to videos, watching videos, by talking to native speakers. And this is why I don't wait with my speaking up to the level where I'm fluent or I can speak about everything. I don't wait till my paper is all blue by coloring it step by step. I do a little bit of every part of the paper by getting this new vocabulary, and and this is how I basically discover the language step by step. So let me know if this makes sense. I hope it does. I've really worked hard on putting this on a metaphor. I really think that metaphors are great for understanding what it really is, and it took me several years to figure out why it works for me and doesn't work for more people. And now I'm glad I'm able to say it using this metaphor of the coloring of the paper. So I believe you guys, if you have been learning languages just the traditional way, if your only experience learning language was attending classes and maybe learning at school, and you say, oh my God, I have spent 6 years learning that language and I know nothing, And maybe it's not your fault, maybe it's because you have been learning the square way, the school method, and you just know a little bit of the language, and of course you cannot communicate in the rest of the language because you have never even seen that. I actually remember when I was learning English at school, one of the lessons, I had a lot of teachers, and with one of the teachers, I came to her because I was reading Harry Potter, obviously, my favorite book when I was a child. And I came and I said, oh, why is this? It was like a grammar thing where it was like shouldn't, and it was shouldn't apostrophe, not apostrophe, and have, like shouldn't have, contracted into two forms. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. What is that? And it appears a lot in the Harry Potter books. And I asked my teacher, and I remember her answer. She said, oh, Litka, don't worry about it. You don't need it yet. We'll deal with it later. It's like very advanced grammar. And for me, that was like, hey, but I want to know this, right? I'm asking you because I want to know it. So of course she told me later on, but just this approach of don't worry about it because this will not what you will be tested on. It tells us so much about the school system in general, doesn't it? Like, what is it really about? But let's not go into that. That would be for a longer discussion, maybe another webinar for English teachers one day. But basically, what I want to say is, if you haven't succeeded yet after many years, this may be the reason. It just wasn't the right approach. And unfortunately, this is how languages are taught all over the world. And it's not the teacher's fault. I know that I didn't realize it for many years. This is how I taught for many years, right? Because this is how I was taught to teach. And I thought that was the right way because everybody does it this way. That's when I realized people need to work with text by themselves and need to discover the language. They need to work with the vocabulary which is relevant to them. And if my cousin is learning English, then he will most probably learn a lot of words about snowboarding, which I don't know in English after working with English professionally. And he will know them right away because he is interested in those words. And this is how languages should be learned. I see Monica says, very clear example shows both different approaches. Thank you. Rosy says, genial, el método natural. Sí, gracias, me encanta. ¿Qué te gusta? This was a light bulb that went on with this explanation. Great job. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I love this. And I see many of you say it's very original, explains it very well. Really glad to see that. Lucas says, thank you for mentioning me, Lydia. You're welcome, Lucas. My pleasure. Lucas from Brazil, from Language Boost, is the Lucas that I mentioned in the TED Talk, an amazing polyglot who has an amazing method, by the way. So if you want, check him out on YouTube. Okay, let's continue with the number 3. Why your learning hasn't worked out so far. Maybe it wasn't intensive enough. And now I'll be saying things you don't want to hear, guys, but I will be honest with you because you signed up for this webinar to learn what language learning is really about, and I'm going to tell you, okay? The best way to example, if you like metaphors, you will love this one. I like it as well. Learning a language is like getting off an island. Now, do you know the picture in the slide in the top left corner? It's from a movie, a really good movie from 2000 with Tom Hanks called Castaway. I'm sure many of you have seen it. And basically, he was left stranded on an island and he wanted to get away from the island. And this was his means. This was his boat, which he built by himself. And he attempted it at least twice. This was what was shown on video. And he never succeeded. And you know why? Because of the last wave. If you look at the picture on the right, the island, right? Let me see if I can show you the mouse. So this is the island. And if you're trying to get away from the island, you'll need to get across some waves. But as you can see, the waves are rather small, close to the island. They're like, around your ankles, pretty cool. But then they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we have the really large waves. Like Tom Hanks was really overwhelmed by the last waves because they were so huge, like several meters high. Now, what you need to do in order to learn a language is to make sure you get across the last wave. The last wave will mean that you speak the language very comfortably and you will be able to keep it without having to work on it over and over again. What happens to people is they start the journey. They start off the island. They start rowing their boat, but they're not intensive enough. And by intensive, I mean they just learn a little bit here and a little bit there. And maybe they do their, little app like Duolingo Memrise or something, some fun activity. Maybe they read a little text. Maybe they go to a lesson with a teacher once every 2 weeks. But but they never can get across that last wave. Why? Because the moment you stop rowing, the waves will drag you down towards the island and you start where you were left off. And this is why many people learn a language for many years and they feel they're always a beginner. They take a break for half a year and then they want to pick up where they left. But no, you're a beginner again. You forgot everything. And this is what makes people think, okay, so languages are just this ungrateful thing where I can work on them over and over again and I will always forget, right? So why even bother? I'm not good at languages. I'll just forget it. This is the story of so many people. But guys, this is about something else. This is about being serious about language learning for some time. But don't worry, it doesn't have to be too long. As I said, I usually take a year and a half of rowing for about 1 hour a day. And I'm telling you, this is fun activities. We don't mean like studying hard, working with books, and being serious. My methods that I like to use is watching Netflix. I changed the language of the series that I watch, and I'm addicted to watching Netflix series. And I watch them in Spanish or French or Polish or German, and this is the way for me to learn a language. And I give it 1 hour a day using different things like learning vocabulary with the Gold List method, maybe watching for 20 minutes, watching Friends, my favorite sitcom, or something else, and then just being in touch with the language so that I can color my paper blue in a natural way. Speaking of the previous metaphor, right? This is the problem for so many people, that your rowing, meaning your learning, has not been intensive enough. And if you if you just row a little bit here, a little bit there, then don't wonder that you will be dragged back towards the island. So what you need to do is start to be a bit more serious about it and be more goal-oriented and say, okay, I'm going to work on this language. And I assure you, if you do that and if you put effort into your language learning in an effective way, in a way which is fun for you, in a systematic way, long enough to get across that last wave, you will succeed in learning that language. And I'm absolutely sure of that because I've really worked with thousands of people. This is not a matter of talent or a few lucky people. Anyone can do it, but you need to work hard. So maybe the reason number 3 is you were not serious enough about learning the language. And you can keep trying this forever with any language. I see so many people who say like, yeah, I'm going to learn Italian. Well, good for you. But, you ask them 2 weeks later, it's like, yeah, I have these books at home and yeah, it would be nice to speak to someone, but it starts with some serious work, with some like regular activities, but fun activities, and then you can bear the fruit of your work and enjoy the language as you want to. Let's get to point number 4, and that's maybe you have problems keeping your motivation high. And trust me, guys, this is a problem for all of us, and I mean me as well. Struggling with motivation levels is very natural. You start wanting to learn the language so much and then it just falls down and you need to find that motivation in you again. And this is probably the hardest thing about learning a language by yourself. And it's hard for me as well. I struggle as well. But this is what also makes it quite interesting, to be honest. So I like this challenge and I always try to find new motivation in me. A very true thing was said by Benjamin Franklin when he said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So if you guys don't make a plan about how you want to learn and how you want to keep your motivation high, then you are bound to failing in language learning. You probably won't get very far. So that's why I will give you 5 tips to keep your motivation high, and they all are somehow related to planning ahead. The first tip is to keep track of your learning. And this is such a simple thing, guys, and this works amazingly. And it can be as simple as the one you see in the picture. This is a student of mine, Sashka, who kept track of her Italian every day. And she would say, you can see she did the Gold List, she did some flashcards, she listened to some podcasts and watched some series, etc. And she basically just wrote down on a simple sheet of paper what she did on that day. And then at the end of the month, she saw that she was actually rowing very nicely every day. And that's what got her to result. This is when you have a month like this, you will have seen an improvement in your language learning. I can assure you of that. Maybe she spent 30 minutes a day with the language, maybe an hour, maybe she planned 30 minutes, but she was so eager to learn that she just couldn't stop it. And she continued because once you fall in love with the methods that, will work for you, it will not be like time spent learning. It will be fun. It will be enjoyable. You will have a plan to watch one episode of the series that day, and you like it so much you watch two more. This is what I love about language learning. If you find the right methods, it's very natural. It's an amazing way to spend your time, and that's when you really see the results and you see your own improvement. So keeping track of your learning is very important. Now, if you think, how would I even do this? If this is even too complicated, I have great news for you guys. For watching this webinar, you get a very special gift from me, a very detailed language planner for 2019 for every month of this year, where you can write it down nicely. You can make some plan ahead of the time at the beginning of the month. And I also want you to look back on your learning at the end of the month and really fill in the chart, which is at the bottom of the chart, and know and think about what I can improve, what I can do better. This simple thing, which you get for free from me as a gift, and I will tell you where you get it when you keep on watching, this simple thing can really make a huge difference in your learning, because you just give it more thought. Like, okay, what do I want to do? How do I do it? How do I do it more effectively? Is it fun for me? This is so important. So keeping track is the tip number one. Yes, let's go to number two, having regular reminders. When the motivation is high at the beginning, we don't need reminders. We all want to learn the language and we're excited about it, but then you will not be as excited about it. And this is very natural, okay? For me, Swahili is not the most exciting thing right now because I've been learning it for a year, and it's still fun, it's still amazing, I love it, and I want to improve it because I have a clear goal. But I don't wake up thinking, oh my God, I can't wait to learn Swahili. That's why I have reminders. Now, I've mentioned already, I put my phone on my Gold List book, and this is something that has happened, that has become very natural to me. And it just reminds me, oh, you wanted to do your vocabulary filtrations or distillations in Gold List before you start your day. Or you can put a little Post-it note on your laptop. Like in the morning when you wake up and you open your laptop, you say, okay, spend 15 minutes reading a text in a browser in your language, and using maybe ReadLang, which is, by the way, a very cool app which you can have as an extension in your browser, ReadLang, such as Read Languages. And you can just read a text and click on the words which are unknown to you, and it will show you the translation in the language, in your language, like in English, for example. It's a really cool thing. Give it 15 minutes a day, and you will see that this will be the gradual plan that you need in order to get somewhere with your foreign language. Right, so having regular reminders works nicely. Giving yourself a deadline is really a great motivation boost as well. For example, signing up for a language certificate, which are usually quite expensive. And when you know that in 2 months you will be sitting for an exam which is on a higher level than you are right now, then most probably you will want to work on that language because you've already paid for it, right? You will be tested on the B2 level, for those of you who know the European framework, or advanced level. And so you will want to work on it every day, and that's a great motivation boost. So give yourself a deadline and work towards that goal for a certain period of time. Or finding a strong intrinsic motivation. Now, this picture is from a trip that I've mentioned in my multilingual introduction, and those of you who speak Russian probably got it. This is a picture of me on the Trans-Siberian Express, which I took a year and a half ago. And I spent 2 years basically learning Russian so that I can make that trip. I mean, not just that trip. I wanted to, speak Russian and learn a new language, etc. But finding this intrinsic motivation, like, okay, I have the tickets. I am going to fly to Moscow, and I'm going to get on the train and travel all the way to Mongolia, and I'm just going to use Russian on the train, and I'm going to know all the babushkas on the train, and I'm just going to make it epic. This intrinsic motivation helped me learn Russian every day, even though I wasn't so motivated by myself every day. But knowing that this will come and I will use that language, it works amazingly. So if this is an option for you, like if you can afford to, I don't know, get a ticket to the country where you will use that language, do it. This will help you so much, and it will keep your motivation going. And finally, don't learn by yourself. This is a thing, this is tricky about learning a language by yourself. I believe that anyone can learn a language by themselves, but it works so much better if you have a community of people who can help you in that, who can motivate you, and who are going through the same stuff as you are. And if you don't have that community, then you can find a buddy, a learning buddy. And I really strongly suggest you look for someone, like one person around you who wants to learn maybe another foreign language. Doesn't even need to be the same foreign language, but someone who will make sure that you guys will keep each other accountable, and you will ask each other, so how did you do? Did you read that text, 15 minutes at the beginning of of your day? Did you work on that? And if that person doesn't do it, then at least they feel bad telling you, and they will just make sure that they want to keep it, so that they keep their word to you, and the same will apply to you, and you will want to keep your word, to keep yourself accountable. So learning by yourself is tricky, and for motivation, this is a motivation killer. So if you can boost it by having a learning buddy, then go for it, and it helps a lot. Okay, now we get to the final reason why it is you have not learned that language yet, and why nothing has changed in the last year. At the beginning of the year is amazing for New Year commitments. I love this time of the year, because everybody's thinking about what they did well, what they did not so well, and what they could do better. And I believe this is really an amazing time to think about, okay, what am I going to do different? Because you know that if you don't change anything, then next year you will be exactly where you are. Like, this is 100%. You can be 100% sure of that. Nothing will change if you don't change anything. So if you want to have different results, you will need to do something differently. And now at the beginning of the year, we could be thinking about, okay, what could it be that I could be doing differently? And it all starts with a decision. It all starts and ends with a decision, actually, because if you don't make the decision, then that's it. Nothing will change in your knowledge of foreign languages in the next year. I love this quote by Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing. And the worst thing you can do is nothing." And this is so true. You can decide now that you will try to learn that language, let's say Spanish, because you want to travel to Latin America and do a cool trip, and you want to be able to speak to locals in Spanish. It's not impossible. It just requires a bit of work from you. So you can decide now that, okay, I want to do it. And maybe on the way, you will find that you haven't picked the best method. Maybe you haven't picked the best book, or maybe you did not have the best, partner to talk to, because he's not very motivated, and you wanted an exchange, but he doesn't really want it, and it kind of just fell apart for a few weeks. Well, that was maybe not the best way to learn. It was the second best way, because you still did something. You decided to go down that road. But if you decide to do nothing, then nothing will change, right? If you decide, well, it would be cool to speak Spanish one day, hopefully, and then that's it. That's your decision not to act. And you cannot expect any results if you decide not to act. This language will just not go somehow magically into your head. It just doesn't work like that. So deciding, making the decision is really, really crucial. And it doesn't need to be the right decision, but it needs to be, a decision to do something. So if we sum it up, all these things that I've been saying, I hope the message is clear, but let me sum it up for you. So what does it mean if you really want to learn a language in 2019? What do you need to do? Well, first of all, you need to look for some materials, texts, videos, recordings that you like. And I cannot possibly, for 10,000 people, give you the whole list of what is available out there. My list, or my advice to you, is Google. Okay, Google it. Google.com will give you all the answers you need. Look for materials out there. Look for text even. I'm not saying that it should be all online. I mean, if you have some material, some text, some easy reader, books, etc. at home, make use of them. Okay, you just need to make sure that you have something. You can Google it, or you can use whatever you have had at home already, and you need to decide to do something about it and not just let it go. You need to set a regular amount of time to spend with these materials a day. It can be 20 to 30 minutes. I personally recommend spending 1 hour with the language to see visible results after as soon as maybe 1 or 2 months. If you are very busy and you cannot imagine spending 1 hour, then do it for 20 or 30 minutes a day. This will really make a huge difference. And make sure you work with these texts in any way you like. You can read them, you can look for new words, but don't try to color the whole paper at once, okay? Think about it this way. I'm working with this text, and I get to know this word, and maybe I don't understand all these other words in the text, but that's okay. I'm going to continue. If you find materials which you like and which are maybe on a slightly higher level than what you are right now, those are the best materials, by the way, to learn, then it will work out. And just don't get desperate if you don't understand everything at once. It's okay. Okay. I'm reading a book in Swahili right now about how to give public speech, and there's so many words I don't know, but I'm so happy about every single word which I find. Like, oh my God, I understand this. I understand this part. Be happy about it because you spend regular time with that language. Keep track of your learning. As I said, this is really, really crucial. You guys are really lucky. Only you, as people who sign up for this webinar, will get the wonderful planner for 2019, and I will tell you where you find it in a minute. And finally, every week, make sure you look back on what you've been doing and check whether you are meeting the 4 pillars, which they are here again for you. You need to make sure the language was fun. Doesn't need to be the most fun activity you've ever done, but just enjoyable in some way, okay? Something that you liked doing and you want to keep doing. The methods were effective because they helped you learn into your long-term memory. You kept a system keeping track of your learning, which is a systematic way, and be patient. Don't expect to see the results after 2 days and then giving up because you don't see the results, okay? You need to be patient a little bit more. And finally, a nice quote by Tony Robbins, whom I've mentioned several times before. If you want to achieve success, all you need to do is find a way to model those who have already succeeded. And that's why in general, and I recommend this not just for language learning and not because I'm a polyglot, I recommend it for anyone trying to achieve anything. Finding someone who has achieved success in that will definitely give you a shortcut. And now, guys, if you are wondering if you could get a shortcut, then I have really great news for you, because I can give you a really, really cool shortcut to achieve all this. Because in general, what happens is you can go out there and look for these materials by yourselves. And I assure you will find your way, because I know hundreds of people who have, hundreds of polyglots who were not good at languages, and then they started looking and they did. It just took them several years. So if you have time and you want to experiment and you want to start looking for those new methods and maybe podcasts to listen to and videos and how to work with them and how to put them into your long-term memory, then go ahead and do it. It's wonderful. It's an amazing journey. I loved it. I enjoyed it for many years. And in the meantime, I would like to invite my webinar guests into the webinar. So Irving, Eric, and Stacy, please log into the webinar, and I would like to briefly interview you to tell people your experience with learning languages, because I know in general that people say, oh, okay, Lydia, this works really well for you because you are so talented, etc., because this is your 9th language. But does this work for normal people out there? And that's why I decided to call 3 very normal people, very nice people who do not have experience learning a zillion of languages, like polyglots, and people who would like to tell us something about their own experience. So, Stacy, can I give you the floor as the first one? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly well. I hope there's no echo if we talk like this without my headphones. So this is Stacy from Florida. Hi, Stacy.
Hello.
Can you briefly introduce yourself and tell people what your experience with languages is?
Okay, well, my name is Stacy, and I teach English as a second language to adults, and I teach Spanish for middle school and high school online. And my experience with learning languages, I've always had language learning in school. I had French, and in college I took Spanish because it just looked so cool. It just seemed so fun, and I heard some people talking in Spanish, so I decided to take it, and I ended up liking it. But I did it, the way that you've been talking about it in the webinar. I did it the way I went to my class for twice a week, did my homework, went to the lab, and that was it. And I thought I was learning. Right. And here I am 20 years later, practically, well, I won't say 20, about 15, 16 years later. I can speak okay in Spanish, but I am not as fluent in Spanish as I would have liked to have been after so many years of learning.
Right.
And that was because I just didn't put the effort or time into it.
Right. So what changed then? I mean, some time ago, I think it was a year ago, possibly, or almost a year ago, you came across a new way to learn languages, which I try to present to the world, and you applied it to German, right?
You're kind of echoing a little bit, or it's kind of
okay. In that case, sorry, I will put on the headphones to make sure, because if you hear me echoing, then probably other people do too. So let me just repeat the question.
Okay.
Is it better now? Actually, no.
It's kind of cutting. It's cutting out. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it should now, because I hear you in my headphones. So is it better now, Stacey? Can I?
Yes, it's better.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So what changed? I'm wondering, when you came across a new way to learn and you started applying it to your German using the master course.
My husband, he's from Germany, and I had taken my first trip to Germany and sat for many hours listening to them speak and not understanding a word. And so I decided to learn German. I tried to find classes because that's how I thought you learned, but I live in a very small town, so there's really I tried computer programs, and they were repetitive and were boring, so I really didn't have a plan. And so I was just drinking my coffee one morning, and I just put in the search engine how polyglots learn languages, and they had a million videos, and I came across yours, and you were doing a free webinar. And so I listened to the webinar and master course and looked through the videos, and okay, there's nothing special to it. There's nothing magical. I thought you were going to teach me something magical, but
sorry to disappoint you.
But you didn't disappoint me. I figured that, okay, I'm gonna give some of these a try, and here I am, half a year, 6 months learning German, and like I've told you, I've learned more German in 16 years of learning Spanish, and doing it by applying what you've said. First of all, it has to be fun. Second of all, it has to be systematic, and and third of all, I love that you don't have to spend hours and hours. I do 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, but I do, like you tell me, about an hour a day. Mm-hmm. And lastly, I don't beat myself up over it if I miss a day or a couple of days. I have my reminders on my phone to get me back into it if I miss a day.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So you basically found your own way how to learn best, right? And you're able to keep it now long term, and you see the results, right?
Definitely, most definitely. Even my husband is impressed with my German, and basically I feel like I've been learning when I'm listening to YouTube videos, or I'm listening to my husband speak, and I can understand the majority of what everyone's saying, and the speaking, I can speak more German than I did in Spanish when I first started learning, and it's just through finding the right time to do it, and having the patience with yourself, and not beating yourself up with mistakes. You just got to do it. Mm-hmm.
Right. That's nice. And what is like your favorite way or favorite method? What do you really look forward to doing when you think about German?
I really love the gold list method. I did try it the first time, but I wasn't very good at it. It didn't help me at first because I was very basic in German. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's for basic. Gold list is good for basics. So I just did flashcards at first. But now that I'm a little in German, I know the more grammar, I know more vocabulary, I know more the sentence structure. Mm-hmm. I started using the gold list method, and it's just amazing how after 2 weeks I can remember so much, without even writing it down, reading it once. In 2 weeks I come back and I remember 50-60%. Mm-hmm. And wonderful. That's my favorite method so far.
Right. Mine too. Yeah. Okay. I hope I haven't influenced you too much, but I love to talk about it so much that now I hear an echo in your video, but. Anyway, I was going to say thank you for your input, Stacey. Please stay in the webinar. I'll ask you a few more questions later on, okay, if we have time.
Okay.
And I would like to ask Irving about his experience with learning languages. So hi, Irving, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and now you can hear me, hopefully.
Wonderful, everything's working. Hi.
So greetings from snowy Moscow, Russia.
Nice, but you're not Russian.
No, I'm not. I'm Canadian. Right, but Russian is a huge part of your life, actually, right? Yeah, I'm a business English teacher for different companies in Moscow. So this method is literally a lifesaver that you've helped not only me with my Russian, but also how I can help other people as well.
That's amazing. So what is your language learning background and language teaching background, actually, because you're both a learner and a teacher? Can you briefly tell us about that?
So we could talk about it for hours, but I know we have to keep it a bit short because we got to let people go to bed and so on. But yeah, I'm an English speaker, native English speaker. I lived in Germany for 25 years, so I speak German like a native, except for the grammar, because I didn't learn it. I didn't have any teachers or anything, so I taught myself, but it took a very long time. Forgotten most of the French that I learned in Canada, and now I'm learning Russian. And my experience when I first came here, because being an English speaker means that I have a lot of French words and German words in English vocabulary, of course, so that makes it not so difficult. But Russian is a Slavic language, another universe. So in the beginning, when I first came here, I tried course books, I tried some different websites, I tried with friends and different things, start, stop, okay, try it again. Wasn't fun. It wasn't fun.
Right.
And I learned in the first 3 weeks of your master course more than I learned in 4 years.
Wow, that's cool.
And to prove that, really, I started your course, and 3 weeks later, we were in the process of buying another apartment in Moscow, and I could actually speak to the real estate agent about what my wishes were.
In Russian?
Yeah, we're not talking about just the weather and how are you. We're talking, I mean, it wasn't deep or anything. My grammar is terrible, of course, but in 3 weeks.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so how motivating is that?
Right. So that motivated you to keep on learning, right?
Absolutely.
When you see the results, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that was my experience basically compared to German, where I didn't have a teacher. I was in the environment. I taught myself. I didn't know what I was doing. Of course, being there for more than 2 decades. Okay, eventually, yes, because I wanted to. And then I come here and I did want to, but with a method, because now I'm an English teacher. So of course I know some things, but it's amazing that what I try to teach my students is that I can't teach you, like you also say in your course. And it was more of a gut feeling. I couldn't put it into words. I couldn't express it like you express it. You have all very structured, but it was my gut feeling that I have to bring the language alive to make them interested so that they want to learn, because you don't need me. We have the internet, for God's sakes.
Right.
So then I get this, and this is like this huge aha, like it's true, I'm not wrong. It's not that all these schools and language schools and school systems that they must be right because I'm in the minority. No, I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
Right.
And you confirmed that. I just didn't realize that. Hey, okay, so I'm in the minority. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong. So it's like Mark Twain said, when you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and think.
That's a good one. I like it. I don't like to be on the side of majority either. Yeah, I think actually many teachers feel this way about language learning, and I receive so many emails from so many language teachers saying, Lydia, you are so right, and this is exactly how I feel, and how can I help students do that, right?
Yeah.
The problem is that people, like, if they pay for a language teacher, they usually expect the teacher to teach them, right? I think this is the mentality, and that's why I decided to just do it very differently and to tell people, okay, you need to learn by yourself, and only start doing this if you understand that you will have to put in the work. I cannot do it for you, right?
Yeah. And we experience as teachers this cognitive dissonance. Well, for the last 3 decades, that's how I've been learning it. Who are you to say, even if you're correct? And that's the cognitive dissonance that we have to fight against, to show these people, hey, learning English is simple, but it's not easy.
Right.
Which means if you do these methods, yes, but actually taking the time, as you say, with your structure, understanding your priorities. This is the revolutionary part, actually. It's revolutionary and simple at the same time, in my humble opinion. But what I found was really cool is that you set the priorities, you set how much time you want, you decide what's interesting, you're discovering your own inner creativity. You're creating your own vision.
Exactly.
That's amazing. It's like, wow, I'm actually teaching myself Russian. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing.
No, thank you, Irving. Yeah, you put it very, very nicely. I agree. I think this is really crucial like for me, it was very crucial to help people find their own way and not to give them the one universal, because there is none, right?
Yeah.
Some people like this and some people like something else. And I can, if I tell them this is how I learned and they will copy exactly how I did it, then they will not succeed. They need to figure out exactly what it is that will work for them and create, use those methods in a long time.
Yeah. So if you're a teacher and you have 10 people learning any language, in my case, I'm teaching them English. So, I mean, how can I keep them all happy? One guy likes to talk about politics. Another guy likes to speak about sports. She might like to be talking about something entrepreneurial and so on. I mean, you're juggling the whole time. And at the end, it's like you've just run a marathon with your brain. You're like, oh, God, how am I supposed to do this?
Right.
But if you come with a method, say, guys, girls, teach yourselves, and I'll show you how. And I fully support your method, your principles, your every. I'm at a loss for words, literally. Yeah.
Oh,
really,
thank you, Irving.
I mean, I know it sounds like over dramatic. Maybe I am, but I'm left-handed. I'm an artist. So, excuse me. Yeah, but that's how I truly do feel from the heart.
Oh, thank you, Irving. You've been a great fan from the beginning. I remember your beginnings with Russian and your aha moments where you were like, "Oh my God, this works! I can learn this language, right?" And it's amazing. It's really amazing too.
It continues. My wife is Russian, and 2 days ago, I actually understood a full sentence. She was speaking with her mother. I thought, "Oh my God, I understood everything."
Nice. Those are the best moments in the language learning process, right?
Yeah. So thank you so much for everything, really.
Thank you, Irving. It's a pleasure to hear that. Thank you so much. I would now like to ask Eric about his experience. Our third guest, Eric, is from Slovakia. And I also want to introduce Eric because he is my business mentor, and we've been working together for quite a long time, actually 3 years now. I'm helping him with his English and language learning, and he's helping me with my business. So Eric, hi, can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely, perfectly. Great to have you with us. So we've heard the experience of Stacy and Irving. Can you briefly tell us about your own language learning and how it was in the beginning?
Yeah. I had a dream, and the dream was I want to have a company in marketing agency and serve my services to US clients.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem was that I couldn't speak English very well. Mm-hmm. And I have been struggling with English almost for 20 years when we first met in EduCafe, and I remember that moment.
Me too.
Because you were speaking about the new methods, how to learn languages, and I had been struggling with that for 20 years. So I was really curious what the methods are, and I came to you and asked about the methods, and you told me something about it. And I remember the moment when I told you that I'm pretty confident to speak in English anytime to anybody. And remember that moment because you told me the sentence like this. So, okay, let's switch into English. And suddenly, in a second, I had cold sweat all over my body and feel very nervous and felt like a fool.
Right.
So the more you were trying to support me, to help me to speak in English, the more I didn't want to say a word. So
right, I remember that moment too very well because yes, you told me like, I can speak English. I just want to improve it a little bit. Like, okay, let's practice that. It's like, oh my God, and the mood suddenly changed. Right, I remember that, but. It's really incredible, Eric, to see you speaking confidently in English now in front of so many people live. It's really I cannot imagine you doing that back then when we met a few years ago. So what has changed? I mean, how come you are confident, really confident speaking English now? What has changed for you?
We decided to work together because I knew that I could help you with your internet marketing because I'm internet marketer, and you could help me with English. So we decided to have a consultation once a week in English about internet marketing. So this is the one part of your system. This is the have a fun by learning the languages. So we have that session once a week. but I knew that isn't enough. So I asked you for another method, how I can improve my English by myself. And you introduced me maybe maybe 10, maybe 12 methods. But to be honest with you, I didn't like them. One of them was the gold list method, your favorite and Stacy's favorite method, but I didn't like them, and I don't like them at all right now. But what I want to say to everybody who is watching the webinar, there is no magic method for everyone. There is no magic method for everyone. So you knew that and know that I'm a tech guy. I love computers. I love phones. I love apps. So you told me about Anki, and I gave it a chance. So I gave it a try, and decided to play or to use Anki on the toilet.
Right.
That's my toilet
Special
story.
method.
That's my toilet story, because I became very addicted to Anki. So I wanted to spend as much time as possible on the toilet, sometimes 2 hours per day, using
That's a big
Anki
challenge.
on my phone. Yeah, and it was a big aha moment for me. There is a method I can use, but I don't need to cram a language. I just have a fun learning language. So
right. I will just briefly say, for those who have no idea, like Anki is an app which you can get on your phone, and it's basically a flashcard system, a very good one, available for free, which is a very similar thing to learn, like the gold list method. But as Eric said, you can pick what you like, and Stacy and me, we're big fans of the gold list method. I also like to use Anki. Sometimes I like to alternate them. And I remember the moment when I told you about gold list, and you were like, nah, writing things down on paper, like, come on, 21st century. And then I told you about Anki. It's like, this is interesting. And then you got so addicted to it. And I remember you being so excited about it every time we met. And your vocabulary kept growing so well because you kept working on it regularly, right?
Yeah.
So that was Eric's method. It was really, really amazing to see how, like, I watched it myself, and the fact that you can speak English now is really, it's just the result of the work you put in.
Yeah.
So Eric, can you tell us briefly, like, how do you learn now? What does your learning routine look like? What methods do you like to use?
Yeah, maybe I spend maybe 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes per day listening to podcasts while I'm driving to work. And then some days, maybe 2 times per week, maybe 3 times per week, I watch a series on Netflix.
Yeah.
And I use my favorite Anki every single day on the toilet.
Right.
And I have sessions with you, but I think it's not necessary to have a session with you. It's necessary to have a session with not a native speaker, with somebody who can speak that language you want to learn, and who is interested in that topic you want to talk about. That's the key.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, by the way, what made, just to explain to others, what made our talk so interesting, because I was so interested in getting the know-how from Eric, and Eric was interested in practicing the language. So this was a wonderful exchange. And by the way, Eric, maybe we can mention as well, if anyone wants to find you, because I honestly recommend your services as well as a business mentor, where can people find you if they want to look for you?
Yeah. The easy address URL is bit.ly. It's a shorter bit.ly / Eric Marketing. Eric Marketing.
With Eric with a K. Yes.
Eric with K.
Eric Marketing. Okay. So I just wanted to mention this because you, Eric, you've helped me a lot. Like, I think we're a great example of how people can help each other if both of them are willing to share and willing to help others grow. And you've helped me grow in my business. I'm happy to have helped you in your English language learning.
It's a win-win.
Exactly, it's a win-win. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and also thank you, Stacy and Irving. I would just I need to actually end this webinar very soon because we're a bit over the time, and I want to get to the questions. So I just want to ask you if you want to add anything else. If I didn't let you say anything, please feel free to open your mic and
No,
Add
no,
anything?
everything good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, in that case, I just want to say thank you for joining me for these few minutes and sharing your stories with us. I think you've been a great inspiration for all of the people watching. Okay.
Das
Thank you,
vidania.
guys. Das wieder. Very nice.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay, and bye. And we continue just by and help people improve the quality of their lives and you know, support them in learning other languages, and it just works really nicely. So just a quick reminder, a special webinar gift which many of you have been waiting for is waiting for you. If you've already checked out the page where you see all the information about the video courses, on the top of that page you can also download languagementoring.com /language. You can download your language planner for 2019. You have it both with an explanation of how to use it well, and it's I think it will be a really nice gift for you for this year if you want to learn any way you like. And of course, if you want a complete know-how, a shortcut, and have it all ready at hand, then at languagementoring.com /language you can find all the information about the 2 video courses. We will also draw one lucky winner who will get my video course. But before we do that, I want to check out the questions and your comments. And I see you've been really active, guys. I see greetings from, and I will just, oh my God, so many countries: India, Pakistan, Madagascar, Belarus, Georgia, Ukraine, Egypt, Armenia, Poland, Morocco, Venezuela, Burkina Faso. Oh my goodness. The whole world is watching right now. It's just amazing to see you guys all here. Thank you again for watching. Let me see if we have any comments. So Elsa says, Irving, you were really great. Memo says, funny, Eric, probably the story with the toilet. Jana says, hi Litka, I watched the webinar in Slovak, now in English, great job, greetings to you and girls from team, can't wait for the academy to start. Nice to hear from you, Jana, great to have you with us. Julia says, Lydia, you taught me the most important lesson in language learning, and that is having a system, and a system that the individual designs themselves. It's just great. Thank you, Julia. I'm really glad to hear that. Katie says, thank you for this amazing webinar. Thanks a lot for the pieces of it. Oh my God, that's really amazing comments. Thank you, guys. I'm really glad you like this so much. Yes, learning a language is like getting off an island. I'm glad you agree with that as well. Thank you for motivation. Okay, let me see if we have any questions. I want to make sure I answer most of the questions you guys have. So thank you for all the comments. Anyway, really thank you. And we will draw one of the lucky winners from the people who have written a question. So if you haven't, then make sure you do, because you can still get one of my video courses for free. So Sylvie says, what approach did you take regarding learning a language that was really difficult for you? So Sylvie, the most distant language for me, which I've learned so far, was Swahili, because it's not a European language, it's a Bantu language from Africa. And I got scared by the grammar at first, because there are 8 different noun classes for singular, for plural. It's something like learning Slavic language for non-Slavic speakers, I suppose. And the thing is, so what the question was, what approach I took. So the approach I take is usually the same, and I explain them in a lot of details in my video courses. When I start learning a language, I apply the back translation method, which basically means that I work with text, I translate them into my language, into Slovak, into a notebook, and then I go and translate back into Swahili, or the language I'm learning, until I can get the language right. I can say it almost fluently. And this has taught me to learn whole phrases really fluently, without any hesitations, without learning about grammar too much. So this is my approach from the very beginning, and this is what I explain in the Language Key video course in a lot of detail. And so what was most difficult? For example, another example is French pronunciation. That was a challenge at the beginning. And again, that was something that stopped me at the first attempt. I gave it like 2 or 3 weeks of learning and then a break, because I thought I couldn't do it. But then I realized I just need to listen a lot more. I just need to get a lot more input, a lot more practice. That's what changed everything, because after that, I was able to understand more and more French and to learn how to pronounce it so that people understand me. Smazma is asking, is there a chance we can learn a language even though we don't really like it? this is tricky. And I believe if this is your case, then you should first of all work on how you can start liking that language. This was, I have to be honest, this was my case with German. I did not like it very much. We had to learn it because it was the language that was selected for us in school. And I almost like hated it for 2 years, I have to say. But then I started to appreciate it. Like, I started to look at it from a very different perspective by watching a lot of TV. Every day I would watch a half an hour of TV at home on my TV, set in my bedroom, and I just realized that it's actually quite melodic. You know, it sounds good. Like German has a very nice flow, and when you hear a lot of it, you suddenly start to appreciate it. I did not appreciate it in the lessons. So try to find a way how you can fall in love with it, and maybe listening to songs. I think this is the easiest way, and I believe this would help you, because if you really hate that language, you will probably not want to learn it very much, and that it will probably won't work. Okay, Justina is asking about gold list. You mentioned that you take it wherever you go. So is it that you always have an additional list with words to write there each day? I mean, a material to use to write 20 words. Okay, great question, Justina. I have a long list of words which I keep adding to, and then every day I just take 20 words, or in this case 14 words out of that. So I have my Swahili lessons with my italki tutor Hamdi, who is the best tutor ever, and I want to say hi to him. And so he keeps writing the words for me which are new expressions and my mistakes, and I have a list of, I don't know, 1,300 expressions, and I just go back and continue taking them one by one into my gold list. And this way I don't ever have to spend time looking for the material. I just basically work on putting that into my gold list. So let me see, there's a few more questions there. Let me see, I want to answer some questions which would be most relevant to all of you guys. Oscar is asking, how can you know when you dominate a language? Probably you mean like master a language, right? Dominar, probably from Spanish, like when you really know the language well. So that's when I told you about the island metaphor, that's like when you get across the last wave, when you feel comfortable. You know it because you meet a native speaker and you can have a conversation with that native speaker without being too stressed, without sweating too much, and without thinking about what you're going to say. And the person replies naturally. They don't have to slow down for you because you are just learning that language. I believe this, for me, is the level where I'm comfortable. I call it many polyglots call it the comfortable fluency level. In Europe, we call it the B2 level, but I mean a B2, not just you. I have a certificate of B2, like I really feel comfortable using my language. That's what matters most. So I always learn up to the level, and when I have it, I keep it for a few months, and then I know I won't forget the language. Because once you get across that last wave, you will not be dragged back towards the island. You will not forget the language. You will basically just keep it. But, you know, here and there, you hear something, you read a book, you meet a native speaker, you practice it. And this is what I do. I don't have to keep my languages, maintain them in any special way. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you finding the time in your busy schedule, spending these 2 hours with me, and learning about how you can learn languages. I hope this has helped you. Please let me know in the comments if you like the webinar and maybe what you like most, because it really means a lot to me. And don't forget that whatever you do, if you want to learn a language, if you want to speak it one day, you just need to start working on it right away. And there is no use waiting for later, because nothing will change. You don't need to wait for the perfect method which will teach you by itself. No one will implant anything into our brain and suddenly we will speak other languages. It would be cool. Actually, it wouldn't. I mean, language learning is fun. The process is enjoyable if you make it enjoyable. And that's when you don't really mind learning language, and you will be like Eric or Irving or Stacy, who are excited about language learning. And whenever someone talks to them about learning a language today, they go like, oh, it's nice. I just do my gold list, I do my Anki, I speak to my wife in Russian, etc. And this is how languages are learned best. Just make it systematic in any way you like, and you will bear the fruits of your work. One last comment: if you want to stay in touch, and especially those of you who maybe are watching this YouTube without registering, if someone sent you a link or something, then please check out my website, languagementoring.com. We are very active on Facebook. We give a lot of tips for language learners, a lot of motivation quotes, etc. special offers as well. So if you liked this webinar, then you will like our Facebook page as well. Don't forget to give us your like. And also Instagram. On Instagram, we have a lot of interesting competitions. We have a lot of interesting content. And in Instagram, Insta stories, you get to maybe be in touch with me on a more personal level, because I like to share some of my personal things in life as well. So make sure you subscribe to our Instagram channel as well. And of course, the YouTube channel, which you're watching right now, just below this video, you can make sure you subscribe to it, and you will never miss another video from me. And I'm going to prepare a lot of videos for next year to give you guys the best tips how you can learn a language any way you like, and just make sure that you keep your motivation high. So I think that's it. I hope I haven't forgotten anything. Again, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely to spend this time with you. And I'm really looking forward to anyone who decides to join me inside the video courses, languagementoring.com/language. If you have any questions, let us know. And that's all, folks. Have a great year to 2019, and just make sure you do something with your languages if you want to achieve some results. Bye-bye. Thank you.